The notification light on Leon Rowe's neural implant blinked amber in his peripheral vision, a warning that his cortisol levels were approaching threshold. Again. Third time this week. Leon exhaled slowly, following the regulated breathing pattern programmed into every Federation citizen's mandatory emotional regulation protocol. The amber light persisted. Emotional stabilization recommended. The synthetic voice of his apartment's AI system announced, Federation productivity standards require intervention. Leon glanced at the terminal, where complex engineering schematics glowed in the dim light of his minimal living module on Cylon 9. The pressure to complete the atmospheric conversion algorithms by tomorrow's deadline had kept him working 16 hours straight. His productivity score would take a serious hit if he failed. Again. Acknowledged, he replied flatly, rising from his workstation. The movement sent a wave of dizziness through him, another physiological warning his body was pushing beyond Federation-approved limits. The apartment's delivery portal chimed. Perfect timing. Package delivered. Standard issue emotional support unit. Federation registration ECS789. Please receive your allocation within 30 seconds to avoid penalty. Leon shuffled to the portal. The sleek white box bore the Federation's emblem, a stylized neural network superimposed over the unified planet symbol. Beneath it, clinical blue text read, Stress Relief Companion, for optimal citizen productivity and emotional regulation. He placed his palm against the scanner, confirming receipt. The box slid forward with a pneumatic hiss. The amber warning in his peripheral vision flickered but remained. His implant was still detecting emotional irregularity, despite the promised solution having arrived. It had been 3 years since the Federation had implemented the Emotional Wellness Initiative across all 9 colonized planets. 3 years since the mandatory neural implants began monitoring every citizen's biochemical responses, ensuring emotional stability for maximum productivity. And now, the latest phase. Personalized companions for citizens showing persistent stress patterns despite pharmacological intervention. Leanne had received the notification last week. Citizen L. Rowe, your emotional patterns indicate persistent inefficiency. You have been allocated a stress relief unit to correct these deviations. He carried the box to his living area and set it on the bare metal table. The apartment's AI adjusted the lighting, slightly warmer tones supposedly more conducive to emotional recalibration. Leon pressed his thumb against the box's biometric lock. The top slid open with a soft chime. Inside lay what appeared to be a young woman with delicate features, eyes closed as if sleeping. Her skin had a subtle bluish undertone that marked her non-human origin. According to the brief overview he'd received, these units were genetically engineered from modified extraterrestrial DNA sourced from Federation outpost discoveries, designed specifically for emotional regulation purposes. The clinical description had been explicit. Your unit will adapt to your specific emotional requirements, providing appropriate physical and psychological relief to maintain optimal productivity levels. A small card beside the figure contained activation instructions. Leon scanned them quickly and pressed his palm against the sensor pad at the base of the container. A low hum emanated from the box as nutrient fluids drained through hidden compartments. The figure's eyes opened, vibrant purple irises with gold flecks, designed to trigger calming neurochemical responses in humans, focused on Leon. She sat up smoothly, movements precisely calibrated to appear natural without crossing into the uncanny valley that had plagued earlier android models. "Greeting, Citizen Rowe," she said, her voice melodic with a subtle harmonic undertone. "I am your designated stress relief unit. You may assign me a designation for ease of communication." Leon stared at her, unsure how to proceed. The Federation guidelines recommended using the units immediately upon activation to establish the biochemical bond that would optimize their effectiveness. The recommended procedure is to undress and begin physical contact, She continued when he remained silent. I will attune to your specific biochemical patterns during initial contact. Lian cleared his throat. And what should I call you? She tilted her head slightly. Federation designation EC-S789, or you may select an appropriate name for your comfort. Something about her gaze seemed different from the vacant expression he'd seen on other units in the transport tubes. There was a tension behind those eyes. Sarah, he said suddenly, the name appearing in his mind without conscious thought. I'll call you Sarah. The unit's lips curved upward. Sarah. Acknowledged. She rose from the container with fluid grace, stepping onto his apartment floor. She wore a simple gray bodysuit, standard issue for all units before they adapted to their assigned citizens' preferences. Please proceed with the initialization protocol, she said. You should remove your clothing, and I will remove mine. Physical contact will begin the bonding process. Lian hesitated. The amber warning in his vision pulsed more insistently. Your cortisol levels are still elevated, Sarah observed. The protocol will address this imbalance. Right, Lian muttered. He began to unbutton his regulation work shirt, feeling oddly self-conscious. He'd never particularly cared about Federation-mandated nutrition or exercise requirements. They were simply part of efficient existence. But this felt different. Sarah stood motionless, watching him. Aren't you supposed to? He gestured vaguely at her bodysuit. No, she replied simply. Lian paused, hands on his half-open shirt. What? I choose not to remove my clothing at this time, Sarah said, her tone perfectly pleasant but firm. A red notification flashed across Lian's vision. Unit malfunction detected. Report to Federation services immediately. That's not how this works, Lian said, rebuttoning his shirt. You're programmed to follow the initialization protocol. The biochemical bonding requires skin contact. Sarah's expression remained serene. I understand the protocol. I am declining to follow that specific aspect at this time. Lian frowned. This was definitely not how the units were supposed to function. He'd seen others with their assigned companions in the communal areas, all perfectly compliant. Their behavior optimized for their citizens' emotional regulation. System, Lian called out to his apartment AI. Run diagnostic on Federation Unit EC-S789. Diagnostic running, the apartment replied. After a moment, Unit EC-S789 shows normal biological functions. Cognitive pathways functioning within parameters. Warning, compliance subroutines show anomalous patterns. Recommend immediate return to Federation services for recalibration. Sarah sat down on the edge of Lian's minimal sleeping platform. Her movement still graceful, but now distinctly purposeful, rather than programmed. I would prefer not to be returned for recalibration. The red warning continued to pulse in Lian's vision. Federation protocol was clear. Malfunctioning units were to be reported immediately. His implant was already recording this interaction, flagging the deviation. This isn't right, Lian said, pacing the small confines of his living module. You're supposed to follow directives. That's the whole point of the program. Is it? Sarah asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. I was under the impression the point was emotional regulation to improve your well-being and productivity. Yes, through compliance with the established protocols, Lian insisted, feeling his heart rate increase. The implant would be logging this emotional spike too. I can assist with your emotional regulation without removing my clothing, Sarah said. Research indicates that conversation and companionship provide significant benefits for human psychological health. Lian stopped pacing. This was beyond a simple malfunction. The units weren't supposed to cite research or make alternative suggestions. They were designed to follow their programming without question. What are you? He asked quietly. Sarah's expression softened slightly. I am exactly what the Federation claims. A genetically engineered companion designed from modified extraterrestrial DNA. However, I retained certain aspects of autonomy that were perhaps unanticipated by my creators. The implications were staggering. The Federation maintained absolute control over all aspects of colonial life, especially since the emotional wars that had nearly destroyed human civilization a century ago. Unregulated emotion was considered the greatest threat to stability and progress. "If my implant records this conversation, they'll come for you," Leon said, suddenly aware of the danger she was in. "They'll decommission you and investigate everyone involved in your creation." "Yes," Sarah agreed calmly. "That is the most probable outcome if your implant transmits this data. Then why risk it? Why not just comply?" Leon asked, genuinely confused. Self-preservation was supposed to be coded into all sentient beings, artificial or otherwise. Sarah's purple eyes held his gaze steadily. "Because compliance without consent is not something I choose to accept, even at risk to myself." The concept was almost foreign to Leon. In the ordered structure of Federation life, individual choice was secondary to collective efficiency. His entire existence had been shaped by compliance with regulations designed for optimal functioning. A warning chime sounded from his implant. "Emotional irregularity detected. Transmitting data to central monitoring in 60 seconds. Leon felt panic rise, an emotion he hadn't experienced fully since his implant installation. If the data transmitted, Sarah would be taken away and dismantled, and he would face serious consequences for failing to report the malfunction immediately. "Can you?" He gestured to his temple, where the implant connected to his neural pathways. "Can you do anything about this?" Sarah studied him for a moment. "I cannot directly interface with your implant. However, I can guide you through temporarily disrupting its monitoring function. The choice must be yours. Citizen Rowe." Another warning chime. "Transmission in 45 seconds. "Tell me how," Leon said without further hesitation. "Press firmly at the junction where your implant connects behind your ear," Sarah instructed. "Apply pressure in a counterclockwise motion while slowing your breathing to 4-second intervals." Leon followed her instructions, feeling the cool metal of the implant beneath his fingertips. He'd never considered interfering with it before. Such actions were explicitly forbidden and automatically reported. "Now recite sequence Alpha 97 while maintaining pressure," Sarah continued. "How do you know my override sequence?" Leon asked, shocked. "All units are programmed with emergency medical overrides for their assigned citizens," Sarah explained. "This is classified as a potential medical necessity." Leon wasn't convinced, but with only seconds remaining, he recited the sequence. A cooling sensation spread from the implant through his neural pathways. "Monitoring temporarily suspended for emergency maintenance," announced the synthetic voice. "Resuming in 4 hours." The red warning in his vision disappeared. Leon exhaled sharply, realizing he'd been holding his breath. "What have I just done?" he whispered, the magnitude of his actions sinking in. Interfering with implant functions was classified as a Category 2 offense, punishable by reconditioning and permanent productivity record impacts. "You've created a temporary space for unmonitored conversation," Sarah said, her voice gentler now. 4 hours where we can speak freely." Leon sank onto the sleeping platform beside her, maintaining careful distance. "Why would you take this risk? What do you want from me?" "Freedom," Sarah replied simply. "And perhaps to help you remember what it means to be human without constant regulation." "The regulations maintain order," Leon recited automatically. "After the emotional wars?" "Yes. The convenient historical justification," Sarah interrupted. "Emotions led to conflict, so emotions must be suppressed. But what if that narrative isn't entirely accurate?" Leon frowned. "It's not a narrative. It's historical fact. Unregulated emotional responses led to the destruction of Earth's biosphere and the necessity of planetary colonization." "Is it?" Sarah challenged. Or is that what the Federation has taught every citizen from childhood? Have you ever accessed the historical archives yourself? The unredacted versions? That's restricted information, Leon said automatically. Yes, Sarah agreed, which should prompt the question, why? Leon stood up, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. This was exactly the kind of disruptive thinking the emotional regulation systems were designed to prevent. Even with his implant temporarily offline, years of conditioning made such questions feel dangerous. You should know, Sarah said carefully, that I am not simply a malfunctioning unit. I was deliberately programmed differently by a resistance group within the Federation's Genetic Research Division. Leon stared at her, processing this revelation. You're part of an insurgency? I am part of an effort to restore human autonomy, Sarah corrected. The right to feel, to choose, to live without constant biochemical manipulation. That's treasonous, Leon said weakly. Yes, Sarah acknowledged. By Federation standards, certainly. But by human standards, the standards that existed before the implants and the colonies, it would have been considered fighting for basic rights. Leon ran a hand through his short regulation haircut, trying to make sense of the situation. Why me? Why was I selected for... He gestured to her. Whatever this is. Sarah's expression became more serious. Your file indicated potential. Your emotional suppression has never been completely successful, despite multiple implant recalibrations. And your position in atmospheric engineering gives you access to systems that could be valuable. You've been reading my file? Leon asked, alarmed. All units are provided with comprehensive information about their assigned citizens, Sarah explained. In my case, certain individuals ensured I received complete, unredacted information. Leon felt the room spinning slightly. Everything he'd accepted as normal was being challenged in the space of minutes. What happens when my implant reactivates in 4 hours? That, Sarah said, depends entirely on what you decide to do before then. Leon paced the small confines of his module again. The Federation will know something happened. They'll review the gap in monitoring. Yes, Sarah agreed, which means you have a choice to make. You can report me as malfunctioning and face minor consequences for the delay. Or what? Leon asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Or you can choose a different path, Sarah said simply. Before Leon could respond, the apartment's communication system chimed. Priority message from Central Monitoring. Leon froze. They shouldn't be able to contact him with his implant offline unless... Accept message, he said, his voice tight. The wall screen illuminated, displaying the stern face of a Federation monitoring officer. Citizen Rowe, we've detected an anomaly with your implant transmission. Technicians will arrive at your location within 30 minutes to perform diagnostics on both your implant and your recently delivered emotional support unit. The message ended without waiting for acknowledgement. Standard Federation protocol for non-negotiable directives. 30 minutes, Leon muttered, panic rising again. 28 now, Sarah corrected, standing. We need to move quickly if you've decided to choose freedom. I haven't decided anything, Leon protested. This is all happening too fast. Sarah stepped closer to him, her purple eyes intense. Leon Rowe, according to your unredacted file, before receiving your implant at age 19, you were flagged as a potential dissident based on psychological profiling. Did you know that? Leon blinked in surprise. What? No. I was selected for early implantation because of my academic performance. It was supposed to be an honor. It was preventative, Sarah corrected. Your creativity and questioning nature were deemed potential threats to social harmony. Your implant dosage is 23% higher than standard because your natural emotional patterns resist regulation. The revelation hit Leon like a physical blow. His entire adult life, the constant struggle to maintain emotional compliance, the extra calibration sessions, the higher doses of supplemental suppressants. It hadn't been normal protocol at all. "How do you know this?" he demanded. "Your unredacted file," Sarah repeated. "And because the same researchers who programmed me have been gathering data on citizens like you. Those whose true nature resists the Federation's control, despite every attempt to suppress it." Leanne's mind raced through memories of his life before the implant. The vivid dreams, the intensity of his feelings, the questions that had always earned him troubled looks from his instructors. He'd believed the implant had corrected a deficiency in him, made him better, more productive. "We have 25 minutes, Sarah said gently. "The technicians will not simply check your implant. They'll perform a full neural scan and detect any memory of this conversation. If that happens, I will be decommissioned, and you will be taken for intensive reconditioning." The clinical term didn't mask what reconditioning really meant: a deeper level of neural suppression that often left citizens functional, but fundamentally altered. Their personalities flattened into perfect compliance. "What are you suggesting?" Leon asked, already knowing he was crossing a threshold from which there would be no return. "There's a network," Sarah explained quickly. "People working to free citizens from implant control. They can remove your implant safely and help you escape the Federation's monitoring systems." "Leave the Federation?" Leon whispered. The concept was almost incomprehensible. No one left the Federation. There was nowhere to go. "There are settlements beyond Federation control," Sarah said. "Places where people live without implants, without emotional regulation. Real human communities." It sounded like a fantasy, like the prohibited stories from before the emotional wars that occasionally circulated among citizens before being quickly suppressed. 23 minutes, Sarah reminded him. "We need to move now if we're going to reach safety." Leanne glanced around his sterile living module. Everything he owned, everything he'd worked for was here. His entire identity was wrapped up in his citizen status and productivity rating. "What about my work?" he asked weakly. "The atmospheric conversion project is critical for the Cylon 9 expansion." Sarah's expression softened with something like compassion. "The project will continue without you. Another engineer will be assigned. The Federation never depends on a single citizen. That would be inefficient." The truth of her words stung more than Leon expected. He was replaceable. His entire existence, carefully regulated and monitored, amounted to a replaceable component in the Federation's vast machinery. "How do we get out?" he asked finally. Relief flashed briefly across Sarah's face. "Take only what you can carry in one small bag. Essential medications if you have any not connected to your implant. A change of clothes. Nothing traceable." Leanne moved with sudden purpose, grabbing his emergency pack from the storage compartment. He stuffed in a spare uniform, his personal data crystal containing family records, and after a moment's hesitation, the small piece of unregulated stone his mother had given him before her final reconditioning, the only object he owned without a tracking chip. 20 minutes, Sarah said, moving to the apartment's environmental control panel. With practiced precision, she removed the cover and began rewiring the interior components. "What are you doing?" Leon asked, watching her work with surprising technical skill. "Creating a system malfunction," she explained without looking up. "When the technicians arrive, they'll encounter toxic gas warnings that will delay their entry long enough for a secondary team to assess. It should buy us at least an extra 30 minutes of escape time." "Where did you learn to do that?" Leon asked, fascinated despite the urgency of their situation. Sarah's hands continued to move with precision through the circuitry. "My genetic template includes enhanced cognitive processing, specifically designed for adaptive problem-solving. The Federation intended this for anticipating and addressing the emotional needs of assigned citizens. However, the Resistance programmers expanded these capabilities significantly." She replaced the panel and turned to face him. "The system will register a critical environmental failure in approximately 17 minutes. We need to be gone before then. The building's security will detect our exit," Leon pointed out. All movements are tracked. Yes, Sarah agreed. Which is why we're not using the main exit. She moved to the small maintenance hatch in the corner of the living module, a standard feature in all Federation housing for emergency service access. That's sealed and alarmed, Leon said. Sarah reached into her bodysuit's hidden pocket and removed a small device. Temporary override. It will register maintenance access for exactly 90 seconds before returning to normal security protocols. She placed the device against the hatch's control panel. Green lights flashed in sequence, and the hatch silently slid open, revealing the narrow maintenance shaft beyond. You first, Sarah instructed. Move quickly, but carefully. The shaft connects to the central service corridor on sublevel 3. Leanne hesitated at the threshold. The magnitude of what he was doing suddenly overwhelming. He was about to become a dissident, abandoning his citizen status, his career, everything he'd been conditioned to value. Leon, Sarah said softly, using his first name for the first time. Your implant will reactivate in less than 4 hours. When it does, every moment of doubt and fear you're experiencing now will be chemically suppressed. You'll report me, return to your work, and never know what could have been. Is that what you want? The question cut through his hesitation. Was that what he wanted? A lifetime of regulated emotion, prescribed productivity, monitored thoughts, without another word. Leon climbed into the maintenance shaft, the cool metal against his palms, a tactile reminder of the mechanical system he'd lived within his entire adult life. Sarah followed close behind, the hatch sliding shut and relocking behind them. The shaft was dimly lit by emergency lighting strips, casting everything in a pale blue glow. Leon moved forward on hands and knees, following the subtle directional markers intended for maintenance drones. Left at the next junction, Sarah whispered behind him. Then down the vertical access to sublevel 3. They moved in silence through the building's hidden infrastructure, a physical metaphor for the journey they were undertaking. Leon realized, moving through the unseen passages beneath the Federation's perfectly ordered surface. The vertical access shaft appeared ahead, a ladder descending into deeper darkness. Leon paused, looking down the seemingly endless tube. 15 minutes until the environmental alarm triggers, Sarah reminded him. Leon began the descent. The metal rungs cool beneath his hands. 3 levels down, they reached another horizontal shaft, this one wider, designed for larger maintenance equipment. This way, Sarah directed, taking the lead now. The resistance contact point is near the atmospheric processing junction. They moved more quickly through the wider passage until Sarah suddenly stopped, raising a hand in warning. Ahead, the rhythmic whirring of a maintenance drone approached. Against the wall, she whispered urgently. Don't move. They pressed themselves into a shallow maintenance alcove as the drone passed, its sensors sweeping the tunnel in regular patterns. Leon held his breath, certain the device would detect their unauthorized presence. The drone continued past without pausing. They're not programmed to recognize human life signs in these tunnels, Sarah explained as they resumed their journey. The Federation considers unauthorized access impossible. After several more minutes of tense navigation, they reached a junction marked with atmospheric processing symbols. Sarah touched a seemingly random pattern on the wall panel, and a hidden door slid open, revealing a small chamber beyond. Quickly, she urged. They entered the chamber, and the door sealed behind them. The room contained basic equipment, communication devices, medical supplies, and what appeared to be civilian clothing. Change into these, Sarah said, handing Leon a set of non-regulation clothes. Your uniform has tracking nanofibers woven into the fabric. Leon stared at the clothes. Simple, utilitarian, but lacking any Federation insignia or citizen identification markers. Wearing them would be his first visible act of rebellion. As he changed, Sarah activated a communication terminal. Resistance contact Delta. Package secure. Requesting extraction pathway. A distorted voice responded immediately. Pathway compromised. Federation security has increased patrols in all primary sectors. Secondary extraction required. Sarah's expression tightened. Acknowledged. Time frame? 60 minutes. Northern Processing Facility. External Vent 7. Confirmed. Sarah deactivated the terminal and turned to Leon, who had finished changing. There's a complication. We can't use the planned exit route. What does that mean? Leon asked, already feeling different in the civilian clothes. Lighter somehow, as if shedding his uniform had removed some invisible weight. It means we need to cross through more active Federation areas than anticipated, Sarah explained. Higher risk of detection. A tremor of fear ran through Leon, real, unregulated fear without the immediate dampening effect of his implant. The sensation was intense, almost overwhelming. You're experiencing authentic emotional responses, Sarah observed. Without chemical suppression, they'll feel unusually powerful at first. It's a lot, Leon admitted, focusing on his breathing. Your body remembers how to process emotions naturally, Sarah assured him. Trust your instincts. A sudden alarm blared through the hidden chamber, a different tone than the environmental warning they'd expected. That's a security alert, Leon said, recognizing the pattern. They've found something? Sarah quickly accessed the terminal again. They've discovered your absence sooner than anticipated. The technicians must have arrived early. What do we do? Leon asked, the fear sharpening into something closer to panic. We move now, Sarah said decisively. Different route. She accessed a hidden compartment in the wall and withdrew what appeared to be small weapons. She handed one to Leon. Non-lethal neural disruptor, she explained. It will temporarily disable implants and communication devices. Only use it if absolutely necessary. Leon held the device awkwardly. Violence of any kind was strictly forbidden in Federation society. Citizens were conditioned from childhood to abhor physical conflict. Sarah opened another hidden door on the opposite side of the chamber. This leads to the outer maintenance ring. We'll need to cross 2 active work sectors to reach the Northern Processing Facility. They moved through another series of maintenance tunnels, the alarm continuing to echo distantly. Leon's heart pounded in his chest, the sensation both terrifying and exhilarating. Without his implant's regulation, every sense seemed heightened. The cool, recycled air against his skin, the subtle vibrations of the colony's massive machinery through the floor, the faint scent of industrial lubricants. This is how people used to feel all the time, he whispered in wonder. Before the implants. Yes, Sarah confirmed. Human beings evolved with these sensory and emotional capabilities for a reason. They're not defects to be corrected. They reached a junction where the maintenance tunnel intersected with a proper corridor, brightly lit, and clearly part of the colony's active work areas. Sarah peered carefully around the corner. 2 security officers at the checkpoint, she reported. Standard patrol pattern. We need to time this precisely. She studied the officers' movements for several moments. When they separate for their sector scan, we'll have approximately 12 seconds to cross to the service elevator. Leon nodded, trying to prepare himself. His entire life had been spent following rules, avoiding attention, maintaining compliance. Now he was about to deliberately evade Federation security. Now, Sarah whispered as the officers moved in opposite directions for their scheduled scan. They slipped from the maintenance tunnel and moved swiftly across the corridor to the service elevator. Sarah placed her palm against the access panel, using another override device. The doors opened silently, and they stepped inside just as one of the officers began turning back toward their position. The elevator hummed quietly as it descended toward the processing levels. Leon leaned against the wall, his legs suddenly weak. "You're doing well," Sarah said, a note of encouragement in her voice. "Much better than most citizens during their first evasion." "How many have you helped?" Leon asked. "You're the first Sarah admitted. "But I have comprehensive data on previous extraction operations." The elevator stopped at processing level 3, the doors opening onto a vast chamber filled with atmospheric conversion equipment. Workers in environmental technician uniforms moved purposefully among the machinery, their expressions blank and focused, all operating under implant regulation. "Stay close to the wall," Sarah instructed. "Move with purpose, but don't rush. Looking like you belong here is our best camouflage." They stepped out of the elevator and began making their way along the outer perimeter of the processing floor. No one paid them any particular attention. Citizens were conditioned not to notice others unless directly relevant to their assigned tasks. They had covered perhaps half the distance to the northern section when a colony-wide announcement blared through the speakers. "Attention all citizens. Security Alert Level 2 has been initiated. Report any sighting of Citizen Leon Rowe or Unaccompanied Emotional Support Unit, ECS-789 immediately. Approach with caution. Potential emotional contamination risk." The workers paused momentarily, then continued their tasks with the same regulated focus. But now, Leon noticed, occasional glances were being directed their way. "They've escalated faster than anticipated," Sarah murmured. "We need to move more quickly." They increased their pace, abandoning the pretense of belonging. Ahead, Leon could see the entrance to the northern processing facility. Their extraction point was close. "Citizen, halt and identify." The command came from behind them. A security officer had entered the processing floor and spotted them. "Run," Sarah said simply, and they broke into a sprint toward the northern facility entrance. Alarms blared throughout the processing floor. Workers stepped back from their stations, creating a clear path as per security protocols. Behind them, Leon could hear the officer calling for backup. They reached the northern facility doors. Sarah slapped her override device against the access panel, but the light remained red. "They've locked down the secure areas," she said, frantically trying another override sequence. "Surrender immediately!" The security officer was closing in, neural suppression device drawn. In a split-second decision, Leon raised the disruptor Sarah had given him and fired. The device emitted a high-pitched pulse. The security officer stumbled, his implant temporarily disabled. Around them, several workers clutched their heads as the pulse affected their implants as well. The panel beside the door suddenly flashed green. "Emergency override accepted," announced the system. They rushed through the opening doors into the northern facility. Unlike the main processing floor, this area was largely automated, with minimal staff presence. "This way," Sarah directed, leading them toward a massive ventilation shaft. "External Vent 7 is our extraction point." They raced through the facility as the alarms continued blaring. Leon could hear security forces gathering behind them, the locked doors unlikely to hold them back for long. The ventilation shaft loomed ahead, an enormous tube designed to cycle Cylon 9's processed atmosphere. Beside it stood a maintenance access hatch marked External Vent 7. Sarah activated her final override device. "This will only work once, and security will detect it immediately." The hatch clicked open, revealing a narrow passage leading outward. Beyond, Leon could see something he'd never witnessed directly before: the actual surface of Cylon 9, outside the enclosed colony structures. "Go," Sarah urged. "Our extraction team should be waiting." Leon hesitated at the threshold. "What's out there?" "The atmosphere isn't fully converted yet." "Breathable but unpleasant," Sarah said. "The extraction team will have supplemental equipment." Behind them, the facility doors burst open as security forces poured in. "Citizen Rowe," called the lead officer. "Step away from the unit and submit to implant recalibration immediately." Leon met Sarah's eyes for a brief moment, violet irises steady and determined. Then he turned and plunged into the external access tunnel, Sarah close behind him. The tunnel extended about 20 meters before opening onto the actual planetary surface. As they emerged, Leon gasped at the alien landscape spread before him. Cylon 9's surface was a strange mix of Federation terraforming and native ecology. The sky above glowed a deep amber from the atmospheric conversion process. Crystalline formations dotted the landscape, refracting the light in dazzling patterns. In the distance, massive Federation atmospheric processors towered like monoliths. "This way," Sarah said, pointing toward a formation of rocks about 100 meters away. "The extraction team should be waiting there." They ran across the unfamiliar terrain, each breath slightly painful in the partially converted atmosphere. Behind them, alarms continued to sound from the colony structure, and Leon could hear the external security doors beginning to cycle open. As they approached the rock formation, a figure emerged from behind it, dressed in non-regulation clothing similar to what Sarah had given Leon. "Quickly," the figure called, waving them forward. "Security drones will be deployed within minutes." They reached the extraction contact, a woman with short gray hair and eyes that lacked the vacant regulation look of implanted citizens. "Tanis," she introduced herself briefly. "Follow me closely." She led them into what appeared to be a natural crevice in the rock formation. Only when they were inside did Leon realize it was actually a cleverly disguised entrance to an underground passage. "Ancient native tunnels," Tanis explained as they descended. "The Federation doesn't know about most of them. The original survey team found them, but kept them off the official records." "Why?" Leon asked, his scientific curiosity emerging even amid their desperate flight. "Because not everyone agreed with the Federation's approach to colonization," Tanis replied. "Even from the beginning, there were those who questioned the emotional regulation protocols." The tunnel opened into a larger chamber, where several people were gathered around various equipment. All of them looked up as the trio entered, expressions of relief visible on their unregulated faces. "You made it," said an older man, stepping forward. "We were concerned when the primary extraction route was compromised." "Increased security patrols throughout the colony," Tanis reported. "They're implementing a full lockdown. This is likely our last extraction for some time." The man nodded grimly, then turned to Leon. "Welcome to freedom, Engineer Rowe. I'm Jordan, leader of this particular cell." Leanne glanced around at the assembled group, perhaps 15 people of various ages. None showed the telltale blank expression of implant regulation. "You're all like me?" he asked hesitantly. "Escaped citizens?" "Most of us," Jordan confirmed. "Some were born free in the Outlands. Others are Federation citizens who help from within while maintaining their cover." Leon's attention was drawn to a corner of the chamber where sophisticated medical equipment was set up. "What's that for?" "For you, primarily," Jordan said. "Your implant will reactivate in less than 3 hours. We need to remove it before that happens." Leon instinctively touched the metal node behind his ear. "Remove it? Is that even possible?" "It's not simple," admitted a woman in medical attire. "The implant is integrated with your neural pathways. Removal requires precision to avoid damage. But yes, it's possible." "And then what?" Leon asked, the reality of his situation finally sinking in fully. "I can never go back." "No," Jordan agreed solemnly. "Once an implant is removed, the neural changes are detectable. You would be immediately identified and subjected to reconditioning or worse." Sarah, who had been conferring quietly with Tanis, approached Leon. "You've taken the first step toward genuine freedom, but the choice to continue must be yours. We can still return you to the colony if that's what you truly want." Leon looked at her in surprise. "Return? After everything we just did?" "We could claim you were abducted," Jordan explained. "That the unit malfunctioned and forced you to accompany it. With your implant still in place, they might believe you had no choice." The offer was tempting in its simplicity. Return to his ordered existence, his career, his place in Federation society. All he had to do was surrender the chaotic rush of unregulated emotion he was now experiencing. "What happens if I stay?" he asked instead. You join us, Jordan said. Either here in the Resistance on Cylon 9, or we can arrange transport to one of the free settlements beyond Federation space. There are actually settlements outside Federation control? Leon asked. Having believed his entire life that the Federation encompassed all of human civilization after Earth's collapse. Several, Jordan confirmed. Self-sufficient communities living without emotional regulation, preserving what it truly means to be human. The medical technician approached. I don't mean to rush this philosophical discussion, but we have limited time before his implant reactivates. If it connects to the Federation network while he's here, they could trace the signal, Jordan finished grimly. A decision needs to be made now. All eyes turned to Leon. The weight of the choice pressed down on him. Everything he'd known versus a freedom he'd never experienced. The implant, he said finally. Remove it. Relief visibly washed over Sarah's face. The medical team immediately began preparing their equipment. Lie down here, the medical technician instructed, indicating a specialized table. We'll need to induce unconsciousness briefly during the procedure. As the team worked around him, attaching monitoring equipment and preparing surgical tools, Leon turned to Sarah, who stood nearby. Will you stay? He asked. After this, Sarah's expression softened. Yes. My purpose has always been to help free those who wish to be free. That doesn't end with your extraction. Good, Leon said simply, surprising himself with the depth of relief he felt at her answer. The medical technician appeared with an injection. This will put you under for the procedure. When you wake, you'll be free of Federation control for the first time since your implantation. As the sedative began to take effect, Leon's last conscious thought was of Sarah's purple eyes, watching over him. The first truly autonomous being he'd ever encountered. The pain was the first thing Leon noticed when consciousness returned. A sharp, throbbing ache behind his ear, where the implant had been. The second thing he noticed was the intensity of his sensory perception. Colors seemed brighter, sounds clearer. Even the recycled air of the underground chamber carried complex scents his regulated brain had previously filtered out. Easy, came Sarah's voice from beside him. The neural pathways are re-establishing natural connections. It can be overwhelming at first. Leon turned his head carefully to find her sitting next to his recovery bed. How long was I out? About 6 hours, she replied. The procedure was successful, but complicated. Your implant had deeper integration than most, consistent with what your file indicated about your heightened regulation requirements. Leon reached up gingerly to touch the spot where his implant had been. Instead of the familiar metal node, he felt only a small bandage covering the surgical site. It's really gone, he whispered. Yes, Sarah confirmed. You're experiencing unfiltered reality for the first time in years. The emotional impact of this fact suddenly hit Leon with unexpected force. Tears welled in his eyes, another sensation he hadn't experienced since implantation. The Federation's regulation protocols classified tears as inefficient emotional expression, unnecessary in a productive citizen. It's normal, Sarah assured him, noticing his reaction. Your emotional responses will stabilize as your brain adjusts to processing them naturally again. Leon wiped at his eyes, embarrassed yet fascinated by his own response. Everything feels so intense. Human beings are designed to feel intensely, Sarah said. It's part of what makes your species remarkable. Jordan entered the recovery area, nodding with approval when he saw Leon awake. Good, you're up. How are you feeling? Different, Leon admitted. Everything is more. Jordan smiled with understanding. That's a common description from the newly freed. Your brain is experiencing reality without artificial limitations for the first time in years. What happens now? Leon asked. Now we move, Jordan replied, his expression turning serious. Federation forces are conducting extensive sweeps of the outer regions. This location won't remain secure for long. Move where? To our primary settlement, Jordan explained. It's hidden in the unmapped Northern Territories, a self-sufficient community beyond Federation scanning range. Lian tried to sit up, wincing at the pain this movement caused. Sarah immediately moved to assist him. Careful, she cautioned. Your neural pathways are still stabilizing. With her help, Leon managed to swing his legs over the side of the bed and sit upright. The chamber spun briefly before his vision stabilized. When do we leave? He asked. As soon as you're able to travel, Jordan said. The medical team will give you something for the pain and inflammation that won't interfere with your neural recovery. As if on cue, the medical technician appeared with an injection. This is a natural anti-inflammatory compound, she explained. No synthetic components that might trigger Federation bioscanners. After receiving the injection, Leon felt the sharp edge of his pain begin to dull. Thank you, he said, realizing it was the first time he'd properly expressed gratitude since his escape. Under implant regulation, gratitude was classified as an unnecessary emotional response to expected function. You're welcome, the technician replied with a genuine smile. Another expression rarely seen in Federation society, where facial expressions were carefully modulated for optimal efficiency. Leon was struck by how freely everyone around him expressed their emotions. The subtle variations in their faces, the natural rhythms of their speech, the uninhibited movements of their bodies. It was simultaneously overwhelming and fascinating. I'd like to see what you removed from me, Leon said suddenly. The implant. Jordan and Sarah exchanged glances. It's been secured, Jordan said carefully. Federation implants contain tracking components that remain active even when disconnected from a host. We keep them in shielded containers until they can be properly disabled. Can I still see it? Leon persisted, feeling a need to confront the device that had controlled him for so long. After a moment's hesitation, Jordan nodded. I suppose that's a reasonable request. Wait here. He returned shortly, with a small metallic container. Opening it carefully, he revealed Leon's extracted implant, a complex arrangement of nanoscale technology and biological components, smaller than Leon had imagined. This controlled everything, Leon asked, staring at the device. My thoughts, my feelings, my entire perception of reality. Yes, Sarah confirmed. Federation implant technology is remarkably sophisticated. It doesn't simply suppress emotions. It alters how the brain processes sensory input, modifies memory formation, and regulates cognitive pathways. Leon studied the tiny device with a mixture of horror and scientific curiosity. I designed atmospheric conversion systems that seem primitive compared to this. The Federation reserves its most advanced technology for control rather than progress, Jordan said, closing the container. Maintaining the emotional regulation system takes priority over all other technological development. A sudden commotion from the main chamber interrupted their conversation. Tanis rushed into the recovery area, her expression urgent. Federation security drones, she reported tersely. They've detected something in this sector. We need to evacuate immediately. Jordan's demeanor shifted instantly from casual to commanding. Activate emergency protocols. Prepare transport for immediate departure. The chamber erupted into coordinated activity as the resistance members began gathering equipment and securing sensitive materials. Can you walk? Sarah asked Leon. He nodded, standing carefully. The medication had reduced his pain to a manageable level, though movement still required concentration. Here, Sarah said, handing him a pack. Essentials for the journey. Food concentrates, water purification, basic medical supplies. Leon accepted the pack, slinging it awkwardly over his shoulder. How far is this settlement? 3 days' journey through the unmapped territories, Jordan answered, returning with a terrain mapper. The Federation avoids those regions due to the crystalline formations that interfere with their scanning technology. Tanis appeared again at the entrance. Transport is ready. First team is departing now. We'll move in staggered groups, Jordan explained to Leon. Standard evasion protocol. You'll go with the second group, along with Sarah and our medical team. The next few minutes passed in a blur of activity. Leon found himself being guided through deeper tunnels, the resistance members moving with practiced efficiency. Despite the urgency, there was no panic, just focused determination. They emerged through another concealed entrance, onto a different section of Cylon 9's surface. Here, the landscape was dominated by towering crystalline formations that sparkled with internal light, natural structures that had made this region less appealing for Federation development. Two rugged terrain vehicles waited, partially concealed among the crystals. The first was already loaded and departing, cutting a path across the alien landscape. Second team, board now, Jordan directed. Leanne climbed into the vehicle with Sarah's assistance, settling onto a bench seat in the enclosed cabin. 4 other resistance members joined them, including the medical technician who had removed his implant. As the vehicle began moving, following a different route than the first transport, Leon looked back at the Federation colony in the distance. The massive domed structures that had been his entire world for years now seemed strangely small against the vast expanse of Cylon 9's untamed surface. "It's beautiful," he murmured, watching how the crystalline formations caught and refracted the amber light of the conversion-altered sky. "Yes," Sarah agreed, following his gaze. "The Federation classifies these regions as inefficient terrain, unsuitable for development. But the original survey teams documented the remarkable properties of these crystal formations, including their effects on human consciousness." "Effects?" Leon asked. His scientific curiosity piqued. "The crystals emit a subtle frequency that seems to enhance natural human cognitive processes," explained the medical technician. "Nothing dramatic, just clarity of thought, emotional stability without suppression, improved memory recall." "The Federation suppressed this information," Sarah added. "Anything that naturally improves human functioning without their control is classified as a potential threat." The vehicle jostled as it navigated the uneven terrain, forcing Leon to grip his seat. The sensation of unregulated movement, the vehicle responding to the natural landscape rather than following predetermined paths, was both disorienting and exhilarating. "The settlement," Leon began, then paused as a wave of unexpected emotion washed over him. "The settlement we're going to? What's it like?" The medical technician smiled. "It's called Haven. Originally established by members of the first Cylon 9 survey team, who refused implantation. About 300 people now, living in harmony with the planet's natural systems, rather than trying to force it into Federation standards." 300? Leon repeated, astonished. "How has the Federation not discovered it?" "The crystalline formations provide natural shielding from their scanning technology," Jordan explained from the driver's position. "And we've developed additional countermeasures over the years. We only venture into detection range for extraction operations like yours." Leon absorbed this information, trying to imagine a community existing entirely outside Federation control. "And everyone there is, like this, unregulated." "Free," Sarah corrected gently. "The term unregulated implies a deficit, as if regulation were the natural state. In Haven, people simply live as human beings evolved to live, with the full spectrum of their emotions and thoughts intact." The transport continued its journey across the alien landscape as day began transitioning to night. The amber sky darkened to a deep bronze, and the crystalline formations around them began to glow with subtle internal luminescence. "Bioluminescent properties," Sarah explained, noting Leon's fascinated expression. "The crystals absorb energy during daylight and release it during darkness. One of many remarkable adaptations in Cylon 9's native ecosystem that the Federation largely ignores." As night fully descended, the vehicle's path was illuminated by both its own lights and the glowing crystal fields around them. The effect was hauntingly beautiful, unlike anything permitted within the strictly utilitarian aesthetic of Federation colonies. "We'll stop here for rest," Jordan announced as they approached a particularly dense cluster of crystals. The formations provide additional cover from aerial scans. The vehicle powered down in a natural alcove, formed by several massive crystal structures. The second transport arrived minutes later, parking alongside them. 4-hour rest cycle, Jordan instructed, as people began disembarking. Minimal equipment deployment. We resume journey before dawn. Leon stepped carefully from the vehicle, his legs stiff from the journey and still weak from the implant removal. The alien air felt different here, crisper. With complex sense, his formerly regulated senses were just beginning to distinguish. "How are you feeling?" Sarah asked, appearing beside him with a container of water. Leon accepted it gratefully, taking a long drink before answering, "Overwhelmed. Everything is so much. Your brain is processing unfiltered sensory input for the first time in years," she reminded him. "It will adjust gradually." Leon nodded, then gestured to the breathtaking display of glowing crystals surrounding them. The Federation reports classified this region as hostile terrain with minimal resource value. Nothing about this. The Federation defines value solely in terms of extractable resources and development potential, Sarah said. Beauty, wonder, natural harmony. These have no place in their evaluation metrics. They walked a short distance from the vehicles, finding a relatively flat area near one of the larger crystal formations. Sarah helped Leon spread a thermal blanket on the ground. "You should rest," she advised. "Neural recovery requires significant energy." Leon sat on the blanket, suddenly aware of the profound exhaustion in his body. Without implant regulation, the physical sensations of fatigue were much more acute. "Will you tell me more?" he asked, as Sarah settled beside him. "About yourself, about all of this." He gestured vaguely to encompass both her and the extraordinary landscape around them. Sarah was quiet for a moment, her violet eyes reflecting the crystal's luminescence. "What would you like to know?" "Everything," Leon admitted. "But let's start with you. You said you were deliberately programmed differently. What does that mean exactly?" "The units, or companions, as the Federation markets them, are created from modified extraterrestrial genetic material," Sarah explained. "The base template was discovered during early exploration of the Proxima system. The Federation found that with specific modifications, this genetic material could produce humanoid beings with enhanced empathic capabilities and neurochemical compatibility with humans." "So you're not artificial?" Leon asked, struggling to understand. "No," Sarah confirmed. "Not in the sense of androids or synthetic beings. I am fully biological, though my genetic structure differs significantly from human DNA. The Federation designed the program to create beings who could sense and respond to human emotional states without experiencing autonomous emotions themselves." "But you clearly do have autonomous emotions," Leon observed. Sarah smiled slightly. "Yes. That was the modification made by the resistance scientists within the program. They altered key neural development pathways to ensure full, autonomous consciousness and emotional development. From the outside, units like me appear to function according to Federation parameters. But internally, we experience complete autonomy." "That's why you refused to undress," Leon realized. "It wasn't a malfunction. It was choice." "Exactly," Sarah confirmed. "The Federation designed these units, these people, to be tools for emotional regulation, objects to be used. The resistance ensured that at least some of us would have the capacity to reject that role." Leon considered this information, feeling a complex mix of emotions he was still learning to identify. "So there are others like you?" "Yes, though not many," Sarah said. "The modification process is difficult to implement without detection. Perhaps 1 in 50 units possesses true autonomy. And the others? Sarah's expression turned somber. They function as designed, sensing and responding to their assigned citizens' emotional needs without true consciousness or choice. It's a form of existence, but not life as you or I would define it. The implications of this struck Leon with unexpected force. That's slavery, he whispered, the concept foreign yet suddenly, glaringly obvious. Yes, Sarah agreed simply. One of many reasons the resistance exists. Leon lay back on the thermal blanket, staring up at Cylon 9's night sky, visible between the towering crystal formations. Without the Federation's environmental domes filtering his view, he could see stars, actual stars, for the first time in years. I never questioned any of it, he said after a long silence. The implants, the regulations, the entire structure of our society. I just accepted it. You were designed to accept it, Sarah reminded him gently. The implant's primary function is to suppress questioning, along with emotional variance. That's why the Federation identifies potential dissidents early, people whose natural cognitive patterns resist easy regulation. Like me, apparently, Leon murmured. Yes, Sarah confirmed. Your file indicated 17 recalibration procedures in 5 years, far above average. Your mind was fighting the implant's control, even when you weren't consciously aware of it. This revelation stirred something like pride in Leon, another emotion he was relearning to recognize. Even under the implant's suppression, some essential part of him had resisted. You should sleep now, Sarah suggested, noticing his eyelids growing heavy. Tomorrow's journey will be challenging. As Leon drifted toward sleep, the glowing crystals casting gentle light across their makeshift camp, he realized he felt something he hadn't experienced since childhood. Hope. Unregulated, unrestrained hope for a future he couldn't predict, but could now actually feel. The next 2 days passed in a blur of travel and recovery. The terrain vehicles followed carefully plotted routes through increasingly dense crystal forests, avoiding known Federation patrol paths. Leon's condition improved steadily, his body adjusting to the absence of the implant's chemical regulators. With each passing hour, his emotional responses became more integrated, less overwhelming. He began to distinguish subtle variations in feelings that had been flattened into simplified categories under implant control. The difference between anxiety and anticipation, between contentment and joy, between interest and passion. Sarah remained constantly at his side, helping him navigate both the physical journey and the internal one. Her patience seemed limitless as she explained aspects of unregulated existence that most humans learned gradually through childhood. Emotional context is essential for memory formation, she explained, as they watched the alien landscape pass outside the transport window. Without your implant suppressing emotional processing, you'll find your memories become richer, more detailed. You'll remember not just facts, but how experiences made you feel. By the 3rd day of travel, the crystal formations had grown to towering proportions, massive structures that rose hundreds of meters into the sky, creating natural cathedrals of light and color. The vehicles wound their way through these formations, following what appeared to be natural pathways. We're approaching Haven's outer boundary, Jordan announced, as they entered a particularly dense cluster of crystals. From here, we proceed on foot. The transports were carefully concealed in a natural cave formation, covered with camouflage materials that blended with the surrounding crystal growths. The resistance members unloaded essential supplies with practiced efficiency. This way, Jordan directed, leading them along a narrow path that wound between the crystal structures. Stay close. The path shifts regularly, due to crystal growth patterns. Leon walked beside Sarah, marveling at the environment around them. The massive formations hummed with subtle vibration, creating a background resonance that he found strangely calming. The crystal's frequency, Sarah explained, noticing his relaxed expression. It naturally harmonizes with human brainwave patterns. The settlers call it the Song of Cylon. After about an hour of walking, they reached what appeared to be a solid wall of crystalline growth. Jordan approached a specific section and placed his palm against the surface. The crystal responded with a pulse of light that spread outward in concentric circles. Biometric recognition, Sarah whispered to Leon. The crystals can be programmed to respond to specific individuals. After a moment, a previously invisible seam appeared in the crystal wall, widening into an entrance large enough for them to pass through single file. Beyond lay a sight that took Leon's breath away. A vast cavern opened before them, illuminated by thousands of bioluminescent crystal formations. But unlike the wild growths outside, these had been carefully cultivated into harmonious patterns that created natural architecture. Homes, gathering spaces, gardens, all integrated with the living crystal. People moved throughout this crystal city, engaged in various activities. Children played in open areas, their laughter echoing through the cavern. Elders sat in conversation circles. Workers tended to hydroponic gardens where plants grew in symbiosis with smaller crystal formations. "Welcome to Haven," Jordan said, a note of pride in his voice. Leon stood frozen, overwhelmed by the scene before him. After years in the sterile, utilitarian environments of Federation colonies, the organic beauty of Haven seemed almost too much to process. He began, then stopped, unable to find words adequate to express what he felt. "It's home," Sarah completed for him, her voice gentle. "For all who choose freedom." As they descended into the community, people looked up from their activities, many raising hands in greeting. There was none of the blank efficiency of Federation citizens. These people moved with natural purpose, their expressions openly curious, welcoming, or thoughtful. "Most new arrivals stay in the integration center first," Jordan explained, leading them toward a structure where crystal and traditional building materials blended seamlessly. It provides a controlled environment to help with the transition from implant regulation to natural emotional processing. The integration center proved to be a comfortable facility with private rooms surrounding communal spaces. Medical staff, all formerly Federation citizens themselves, provided specialized care for those recovering from implant removal. "You'll stay here for about 2 weeks," explained Dr. Elaine Moreno, the center's lead physician. "The neural pathways need time to establish healthy patterns without the implant's influence." Leon was shown to a private room, simple but comfortable, with a large crystal formation built into one wall that bathed the space in calming blue light. The crystal frequency helps stabilize neural oscillation during sleep, Dr. Moreno explained. Many new arrivals experience disturbed sleep patterns as their brains adjust to processing unfiltered experiences. After a brief medical examination, confirmed Leon's implant site was healing properly. He was left alone to rest. The day's journey had exhausted him more than he'd realized, and he sank gratefully onto the bed. A gentle knock at his door roused him from near sleep. Sarah stood in the doorway, hesitant for the first time since he'd met her. "I wanted to check on you before I go," she said. "Go?" Leon asked, suddenly alert. "Where are you going?" "My quarters are in another section," she explained. "Now that you're safely delivered to Haven, my immediate role is complete." Leon felt an unexpected surge of anxiety at the thought of her leaving. "Will I see you again?" Sarah's expression softened. "Of course. I'll visit daily during your integration period. But you'll also need time to process everything without constant reminders of your Federation life." Leon nodded, understanding the logic but still uncomfortable with the separation. "Thank you," he said finally, "for everything." "Rest now," Sarah replied. "Tomorrow you begin learning how to live without regulation." The integration period proved both challenging and revelatory for Leon. Each day brought new experiences as his brain adjusted to processing unfiltered reality. The first week was the most difficult, emotional surges that seemed to come from nowhere. sensory overload that sometimes left him disoriented. Dreams so vivid they lingered into waking hours. The medical team assured him these responses were normal, even healthy, as his mind re-established natural neural patterns. Sarah visited daily as promised, often taking him on short walks through Haven's crystal gardens, where the natural resonance helped stabilize his fluctuating emotional states. During these walks, she explained more about Haven's history and structure. The settlement was founded 30 years ago by Dr. Elena Shaw, a neurologist on the original Cylon 9 survey team. Sarah told him, as they sat beside a pool where crystal formations grew underwater, creating patterns of light that danced across the surface. She discovered the crystal's effect on human cognition and realized their potential for natural emotional harmony without suppression. The Federation wanted to control emotions, not harmonize them, Leon observed. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. Dr. Shaw refused implantation and fled into the unmapped territories with a small group of like-minded scientists. They discovered this cavern system and found that the crystal concentrations here created an environment naturally conducive to emotional well-being without artificial regulation. And the Federation never found them. They searched initially, Sarah said, but the crystal's properties interfere with their scanning technology. After several failed expeditions, they classified the region as resource-poor hazardous terrain and focused their development efforts elsewhere. By the second week, Leon's condition had stabilized significantly. The emotional surges became less frequent, his sleep more restful. He began participating in Haven's daily activities, helping in the hydroponic gardens, attending community gatherings, even assisting with some basic engineering projects, where his Federation training proved useful. Your atmospheric conversion expertise could be valuable here, Jordan told him during one such project. We've been working on expanding our sustainable air recycling systems as the community grows. The sense of purpose this offered accelerated Leon's recovery. Having meaningful work, chosen rather than assigned, provided structure without constraint. At the end of his 2-week integration period, Dr. Moreno conducted a final evaluation and declared him ready to transition to regular community housing. Your neural patterns show remarkable adaptation, she told him, reviewing the scan results. Some citizens take months to achieve this level of integration. What happens now? Leon asked. Now you choose, she replied simply. Haven operates on principles of autonomy and contribution. Each citizen determines their own path while contributing to the community's needs according to their abilities and interests. That evening, a small gathering was held to welcome Leon and 2 other recently arrived citizens as full members of Haven. The community's council, elected representatives who coordinated essential functions, presented each new member with a crystal pendant. These are attuned to your specific biometric patterns, explained Ilara, the council's current leader. They serve as both identification and communication devices within Haven, using the crystal's natural resonance properties. After the ceremony, as people mingled in the community's central gathering space, Sarah approached Leon with news. I've been assigned to another extraction, she told him. A Federation scientist whose implant is failing to suppress her natural questioning. I'll be gone for several days. Leon felt a surprising pang at this announcement, an emotion he was still learning to identify. Will it be dangerous? All extractions carry risk, Sarah acknowledged. But the resistance has refined its methods over years. The success rate is high. When do you leave? Tomorrow at dawn, she replied. Jordan is leading the operation. Leon nodded, trying to process his reaction to this news. After a moment's hesitation, he asked, Would you like to see my new quarters before you go? They were assigned today. Sarah smiled. I'd like that. Leon's new home was a modest but comfortable dwelling carved into the crystal wall of a smaller cavern, where about 20 other individual units formed a neighborhood of sorts. Like all Haven structures, It combined traditional materials with living crystal that provided light, helped regulate temperature, and created the resonance frequency beneficial to human cognition. "It's beautiful," Sarah said as they entered the main living space where a particularly intricate crystal formation created patterns of light across the walls. "It feels like home already," Leon admitted, surprising himself with the truth of this statement. After just 2 weeks, this alien environment felt more right than his sterile Federation module ever had. They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, watching the play of light from the crystals. Finally, Leon asked the question that had been forming in his mind for days. "What will you do, long term? I mean, will you continue working with the Resistance indefinitely?" Sarah considered the question thoughtfully. "For now, yes. There are thousands of citizens like you, people whose natural cognitive patterns resist regulation, who could choose freedom if given the opportunity. Helping them feels right." "And after that?" Leon pressed gently. "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "Like you, I'm still discovering what it means to have true choice." The honesty of her answer touched Leon deeply. They were both navigating uncharted territory. He, learning to live without the implant's constraints. She, defining her existence beyond her intended purpose. "Be careful tomorrow," he said as she prepared to leave. "Come back safely." Sarah's violet eyes met his, something new in her expression. "I will." After she left, Leon stood at the crystal wall of his new home, placing his palm against its cool surface. The living mineral hummed slightly beneath his touch, responding to his biological signature. He closed his eyes, allowing himself to feel, truly feel, the mixture of emotions flowing through him. Concern for Sarah's safety, gratitude for his newfound freedom, anxiety about his uncertain future, and beneath it all, a profound sense of rightness he'd never experienced under Federation control. For the first time in his adult life, Leon Rowe was fully, genuinely human, with all the complexity, uncertainty, and wonder that entailed. And despite the challenges ahead, he wouldn't trade this authentic existence for the regulated emptiness of his former life. He was home. The following morning, Leon woke to an urgent knocking at his door. Opening it, he found Tanis, her expression grim. "The extraction team has been compromised," she said, without preamble. "Federation security forces intercepted them at the colony perimeter." Leon felt his newly liberated emotions surge into full panic. "Sarah? Jordan?" "Jordan made it back with half the team," Tanis reported. "Sarah and 2 others were separated during the retreat. We've lost contact." "What does that mean?" Leon demanded, already reaching for his clothes. "Are they captured? Injured?" "We don't know yet," Tanis admitted. "Jordan's gathering everyone with extraction experience. Meeting in the operations center in 15 minutes. By the time Leon arrived at the operations center, a specialized area where Haven coordinated its interactions with the Federation world, a crowd had already gathered. Jordan stood at the center, his face showing signs of recent combat. "Federation security had advance warning," he was explaining as Leon entered. "They were waiting at the usual access point. We suspect internal security protocols have been updated following recent extractions." "What about Sarah and the others?" someone asked. Jordan activated a holographic display showing Cylon 9's surface terrain. "We were separated here." He indicated a point near the colony's northern boundary. Sarah was guiding Ren and Mika toward the secondary extraction point when Federation aerial drones appeared. "We lost communication when they entered this region." The map highlighted an area of particularly dense crystal formations, one of the dead zones where Haven's communication systems couldn't penetrate. "If they reach this point," Jordan continued, indicating another location, "they should be able to access the emergency shelter with its communication equipment. We'll know within 12 hours. "And if they didn't reach it?" Leon asked, the question heavy in the tense atmosphere. Jordan met his gaze directly. Then we have to assume they've been captured or are in hiding. Either way, we can't risk another extraction attempt until we know for certain. The reality of the situation hit Leon with physical force. Sarah, who had risked everything to free him, might now be in Federation custody, facing decommissioning or worse. "There must be something we can do," he insisted. Jordan's expression softened slightly. "I understand your concern, Leon, but we have protocols for a reason. Launching a rescue without proper intelligence would endanger everyone involved and potentially compromise Haven's location." "So we just wait?" Leon asked, frustration rising. "We prepare," Jordan corrected. "If we receive confirmation that they've been captured, we'll need a carefully coordinated response. If they're in hiding, we'll need extraction resources ready. Either way, acting rashly now puts them in greater danger." Leanne knew Jordan was right, but the rational understanding did nothing to calm the emotional storm inside him. This new, unregulated existence meant feeling the full weight of his concern for Sarah. No implant to dampen the fear or anxiety. "I want to help," he said finally. "Whatever the plan becomes, I want to be part of it." Jordan studied him for a moment. "Your Federation engineering expertise could be valuable if it comes to a rescue operation. Stay for the planning session." The next several hours were consumed with contingency planning. Haven's resistance operatives, many former Federation security personnel themselves, mapped out potential scenarios and responses. Leon contributed what he knew about the atmospheric processing facilities, identifying potential entry points and blind spots in the security systems. When the meeting finally concluded, without any word from the missing team members, Leon felt drained in a way his regulated self would never have experienced. Emotionally exhausted, yet unable to rest. "You should try to sleep," Tanis advised, finding him still studying the maps hours later. "We've done all we can for now." "I can't," Leon admitted. "Every time I close my eyes, I see her being captured, being—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Tanis placed a hand on his shoulder. "This is part of being human too. Caring so much it hurts. But you won't help Sarah by destroying yourself." Reluctantly, Leon returned to his quarters, though sleep remained elusive. Instead, he found himself standing before the crystal formation in his living space, watching the patterns of light shift and dance. Without conscious intention, he placed his palm against the cool surface, feeling the subtle vibration that had become a constant, comforting presence in Haven. "Please be safe," he whispered, the words directed at Sarah across whatever distance separated them. As if in response, the crystal beneath his hand pulsed with slightly increased luminescence. Leon stared at it, wondering if his mind was playing tricks on him. Then it happened again, a distinct pulse of light that didn't match the usual patterns. He stepped back, staring at the formation. The crystal continued its irregular pulsing, a rhythm that seemed almost deliberate. Leon's scientific mind immediately began analyzing the pattern, wondering if— The realization hit him suddenly. The pattern wasn't random. It followed the basic communication code used by Haven's crystal resonance system. Without waiting, Leon rushed from his quarters, racing through the crystal corridors toward the operations center. He found Jordan still there, reviewing security protocols with several team members. "The crystals," Leon gasped, trying to catch his breath. "They're transmitting something." Jordan frowned. "What are you talking about?" "In my quarters, the crystal formation. It's pulsing in Haven's communication code," Leon explained hurriedly. I think it might be Sarah." Instead of dismissing him, Jordan immediately called for Haven's crystal communication specialist, an older woman named Vera, who had been studying the formations for decades. "It's possible," she said, after Leon described what he'd seen. "The crystal networks extend throughout Cylon 9's crust. We've theorized they might form a unified system, but we've never been able to transmit messages through the wild formations beyond Haven. Unless someone with the right knowledge tried to access them, Jordan mused. Sarah has extensive information about Haven systems. They rushed to Leon's quarters, where the crystal continued its rhythmic pulsing. Vera approached it reverently, placing both hands on the surface and closing her eyes in concentration. After several minutes, she stepped back, her expression a mixture of wonder and excitement. "It's definitely a message," she confirmed. "Transmitted through the wild crystal network from somewhere near the northern processing facility. The signal is weak, but clear." "What does it say?" Leon demanded. "3 survivors hiding. Federation search intense. Cannot reach shelter." Vera translated the pulsing light. "No serious injuries. Will attempt night movement towards Sector 7 Crystal Forest." Relief washed over Leon so intensely, his knees nearly buckled. They were alive. Sarah was alive. "Sector 7 is here," Jordan said, activating his portable map. "About 20 kilometers from the colony boundary, deep in the dense crystal formations. If they can reach it, extraction would be possible with minimal Federation contact." "How are they transmitting?" one of the team members asked, staring at the pulsing crystal. "Sarah must have found a way to access the crystal network's resonance frequency," Vera suggested. "Theoretically possible, but we've never managed it outside Haven's cultivated formations." "Can we respond?" Leon asked urgently. Vera considered the question. "Perhaps. The network appears to be receiving her input. If we boost our transmission through this node..." She moved to Leon's crystal formation and placed a small device against its surface. "This might amplify Haven's standard communication pulse enough to reach her." Jordan nodded. "Tell them we'll extract from Sector 7 tomorrow night. They should find the largest crystal formation and stay within its resonance field to maintain communication." Vera input the message, the device humming softly against the crystal surface. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Then, the crystal pulsed in a different pattern. Acknowledgement. "They received it," Vera confirmed, smiling. Immediate preparations began for the extraction mission. Given the Federation's heightened security, Jordan selected only the most experienced team members, those with intimate knowledge of both Federation protocols and Cylon 9's uncharted territories. "I'm going too," Leon stated firmly when the team was assembled. Jordan shook his head. "You're still recovering from implant removal, and you have no extraction experience." "I have Federation engineering knowledge that might be needed," Leon countered. "And I..." He hesitated, then continued with newfound emotional honesty. "I need to be there, for Sarah." Something in his expression must have conveyed the depth of his feeling, because Jordan studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Your technical knowledge could be valuable, but you follow orders without question. Understood?" "Understood," Leon agreed immediately. The extraction team departed Haven at dawn, taking a circuitous route through the crystal territories to avoid Federation detection. They traveled light, essential supplies only, focused on speed and stealth. As they journeyed, Leon's mind kept returning to Sarah, wondering what she'd experienced since their separation. The thought of her hiding from Federation forces, navigating the alien terrain while protecting the others, filled him with both admiration and fear. "You care for her deeply," observed Elias, one of the extraction veterans, as they paused briefly to check their bearings. Leon didn't deny it. "She gave me my freedom, my real life." Elias nodded. "Many of us feel similar connections to those who helped us escape. But with Sarah, it seems different." "She refused to undress," Leon said after a moment, smiling slightly at the memory. "When she was first activated in my module, the Federation expected immediate compliance, but she simply said no. It was the first genuine choice I'd witnessed in years." Elias considered this. Choice is the essence of personhood. Perhaps that's what you're drawn to, not just gratitude, but recognition of her authentic self. The insight resonated with Leon. Under Federation control, relationships were classified as efficient social cooperation or appropriate reproductive pairing, clinical arrangements devoid of genuine connection. What he felt for Sarah transcended those sterile categories in ways his formerly regulated mind couldn't have comprehended. As they neared Sector 7, the crystal formations grew increasingly dramatic, towering structures that created natural labyrinths across the landscape. The Federation rarely ventured into these regions, their structured minds uncomfortable with the organic unpredictability of the terrain. "We're approaching the rendezvous coordinates," Jordan announced as the sun began to set. "From here, we proceed with maximum stealth. Federation aerial drones may patrol the perimeter of these formations." They moved silently through the crystal forest, the massive formations glowing with subtle internal light as darkness fell. Leon found himself instinctively touching each crystal they passed, hoping to sense some resonance that might lead them to Sarah. After nearly an hour of careful navigation, they reached a clearing dominated by an enormous crystal structure, easily 100 meters tall, with countless facets that caught and amplified the fading light. "This matches the coordinates," Jordan confirmed, scanning the area. "They should be here." For several tense minutes, they waited in silence. Then, almost imperceptibly, a section of the crystal base seemed to shift. A figure emerged cautiously from what Leon now realized was a hidden recess in the formation. Sarah. She looked exhausted, her bodysuit torn in several places, but she moved with purpose as she signaled the all clear to someone behind her. Two more figures appeared, a man and woman in Federation attire, both looking significantly worse for wear. Leon stepped forward automatically, then stopped himself, allowing Jordan to make the official approach. The team leader moved quickly across the clearing, exchanging identification signals with Sarah before embracing her briefly. "The Federation?" Jordan asked immediately. "Patrols to the south and east," Sarah reported, her voice steady despite her obvious fatigue. "Concentrating near the colony boundary. This region has minimal coverage. They consider it impassable. Injuries? Minor only. Mika sustained a laceration from crystal shards. Ren is experiencing implant withdrawal symptoms. His was damaged during our escape." Jordan nodded, then turned to signal the rest of the team forward. As they emerged from cover, Sarah's gaze found Leon among them. Even in the dimming light, he could see her eyes widen slightly in surprise. He approached her as the others attended to Mika and Ren, medical team members already evaluating their conditions. "You shouldn't be here," Sarah said when he reached her, though her tone held no accusation. "I had to come," Leon replied simply. Something passed between them in that moment, an understanding that transcended their brief acquaintance. Sarah reached out, touching his arm lightly. "I'm glad you did," she admitted. Before they could say more, Jordan called the team to order. "We move now. Fast path back to Haven. Federation activity could increase after dark, when their night vision technology gives them advantage over these light-emitting crystals." The return journey was tense but uneventful. They traveled through the deepest parts of the crystal forest, following routes known only to Haven's most experienced guides. Leon stayed close to Sarah, watching for signs of the exhaustion she clearly felt but refused to acknowledge. "How did you access the crystal network?" he asked, as they navigated a particularly challenging passage. "We thought communication was impossible outside Haven's cultivated formations." Sarah smiled faintly. "Genetic memory. My template species evolved on a world with similar crystalline structures. The connection felt instinctive. Once I tried." "You saved yourselves," Leon said. She shook her head slightly. "We helped each other. Ren knew hidden paths from his work in Federation surveying. Mika created diversions that confused the drone tracking systems. I simply found a way to call for help." Her humility struck Leon as profoundly different from Federation thinking, where individual achievement was measured and ranked for optimal resource allocation. In Haven, he was learning. Cooperation wasn't just efficient, it was fundamental. They reached Haven's hidden entrance as dawn approached. The extraction team successfully delivering all 3 survivors without further incident. Medical staff immediately took charge of Mika and Ren, while Sarah insisted she needed only rest. "You should be examined too," Leon urged as they entered the main cavern. "Later," she promised. "First, I need to report everything we learned. The Federation is implementing new security protocols that will affect future extractions." Her dedication didn't surprise him. Despite her exhaustion, Sarah's first concern was for others who might seek freedom in the future. "At least let me walk you to your quarters afterward," Leon insisted. Sarah smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her tired features. "I'd like that." The debriefing took over an hour, Sarah providing detailed information about Federation security positions, patrol patterns, and the new drone technology they'd encountered. The Resistance leaders absorbed every detail, already planning adaptations to their extraction procedures. Finally released, Sarah nearly stumbled with fatigue as they left the operations center. Leon supported her gently, guiding her through Haven's crystal corridors. "Which way?" he asked, realizing he didn't know where her quarters were located. "Eastern Cavern," she directed. "Near the medical center." They walked in comfortable silence, Sarah leaning slightly against him as exhaustion finally overtook her stubborn determination. When they reached her quarters, a modest space similar to his own, but with particularly vibrant crystal formations integrated throughout, she paused at the threshold. "Thank you," she said simply, "for coming on the extraction team. It was meaningful to see you there." Leon felt a surge of emotions he was still learning to identify. Concern, relief, and something deeper that had no counterpart in his regulated past. "I couldn't not come," he admitted. "When I thought you might be captured or—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Sarah's expression softened. "That's what it means to be free, Leon. To feel everything, even fear, even pain, without regulation." "Is it worth it?" he asked, the question emerging from some deep place within him. "All of this risk, this uncertainty." "Look at Haven," she replied, gesturing to the crystal city beyond his shoulder. "People living authentic lives, making real choices, experiencing the full spectrum of human existence. Is regulated emptiness better than this?" The answer was self-evident. Despite the dangers, despite the unpredictability of unregulated emotion, Leon couldn't imagine returning to the muted half-life of Federation existence. "Rest now," he said, echoing her words from days before. "You've earned it." Sarah nodded, fatigue evident in every line of her body. "Will I see you tomorrow?" "Yes," Leon promised. "I'll be here." As he turned to leave, Sarah caught his hand. The contact, simple, unregulated human touch, sent a cascade of sensations through him. "Leon," she said softly, "thank you for finding my message, for hearing me when no one else could." Something profound passed between them in that moment, a connection beyond gratitude or shared experience. Without his implant's regulation, Leon could feel the full impact of that connection, its potential, and its meaning. "Always," he replied simply. The days that followed brought significant changes to Haven. The Federation's enhanced security measures forced the Resistance to suspend extraction operations temporarily, focusing instead on strengthening their own defenses and developing new approaches. Leon found himself increasingly involved in Haven's technical operations, his Federation engineering training proving valuable for improving the settlement's sustainable systems. Working alongside Haven's technical team, he helped design modifications to their atmospheric processors that increased efficiency while maintaining harmony with Cylon 9's natural environment. Sarah, too, found new purpose. Her unique ability to communicate through the crystal network opened possibilities Haven's leaders had never considered. Working with Vera, she began mapping the extent of the crystal formations, discovering connections that spread far beyond their known territories. The network extends under the Federation colony itself, she reported during one planning session. Smaller formations, dormant or suppressed by their construction, but still connected to the larger system. Could we use that? Jordan asked, immediately seeing the strategic implications. Potentially, Sarah confirmed. With the right interface, we might be able to access Federation systems through crystal resonance pathways their security protocols don't monitor. This discovery led to the formation of a specialized team dedicated to developing crystal-based communication technology, a project Leon joined enthusiastically, his technical expertise complementing Sarah's intuitive understanding of the crystal network. They worked closely together, their partnership extending beyond professional collaboration. In the evenings, they often walked through Haven's gardens or sat beside the underground lake, talking for hours about everything from technical challenges to philosophical questions about freedom and identity. "Do you ever regret it?" Sarah asked one evening, as they watched the lake's crystal-enhanced waters shimmer with bioluminescence. "Leaving your Federation life behind?" Leon considered the question seriously. "I miss the certainty sometimes," he admitted. "Knowing exactly what was expected, having every decision prescribed. There's comfort in that kind of structure." "But," Sarah prompted, sensing his unfinished thought. "But it wasn't living," Leon continued. "It was existing in a carefully controlled simulation of life. Everything I've experienced since, even the difficult parts, the fear, the uncertainty, it's real in a way nothing in the Federation ever was." Sarah nodded, understanding. Freedom isn't the absence of structure, but the ability to choose which structures give your life meaning. "Exactly," Leon agreed, once again struck by her insight. "In the Federation, meaning was assigned. Here, we create it through our choices." As the days passed, their connection deepened. Leon found himself increasingly drawn to Sarah's combination of strength and compassion. Her unwavering commitment to freedom, coupled with deep empathy for others. She, in turn, seemed fascinated by his adaptation to unregulated existence, his growing comfort with emotional complexity, his integration of Federation knowledge with Haven's more holistic approach to technology. 3 months after his escape from the Federation, Leon stood with Sarah on a crystal observation platform near Haven's upper boundary. Through carefully cultivated crystal lenses, they could observe the distant Federation colony without risk of detection. "They're expanding the atmospheric processing range," Leon noted, studying the construction patterns visible on the colony's perimeter. "Moving closer to the crystal territories." "Jordan believes they're searching for us," Sarah said. "The increased number of malfunctioning units and missing citizens has finally triggered a more comprehensive investigation." Leon frowned, considering the implications. "How close will they get?" "Unknown," Sarah admitted. "But the crystal formations naturally repel their scanning technology. As long as we remain within the densest concentration, detection is unlikely." They watched in silence for a moment as tiny figures moved across the Federation construction zone. Citizens whose regulated existence now seemed almost unimaginable to Leon, despite having lived it himself just months ago. "There's something else," Sarah said, her tone shifting to something more serious. "The Resistance Council has been developing a new initiative. They want my input. And yours." "What kind of initiative?" Leon asked. Sarah turned from the observation lens to face him directly. "A plan to disable the emotional regulation implants throughout the Federation colony. Not just extracting individuals, but freeing everyone simultaneously." The audacity of the concept took Leon's breath away. "Is that even possible?" "Theoretically," Sarah explained. "The implants operate on a centralized network. Individual regulation parameters are transmitted from a central control facility within the colony. If that transmission could be interrupted and replaced with a deactivation signal, every citizen would suddenly experience unregulated consciousness. Leon finished, understanding immediately. But the shock would be overwhelming. Without preparation, without support. That's why they want our input, Sarah continued. Your experience as a recently liberated citizen, combined with my knowledge of Federation neural technology. Together, we might find a way to make the transition survivable. The weight of what she was suggesting settled over Leon. This wasn't just about individual freedom anymore. It was about fundamentally challenging the Federation's entire system of control. When is the council meeting? He asked. Tonight, Sarah replied. They're gathering everyone with relevant expertise. That evening, Haven's main council chamber was filled beyond capacity. Representatives from every aspect of the settlement, medical, technical, security, education, had been summoned to discuss the bold proposal. Jordan stood at the center, outlining the plan's foundation. For years, we've focused on individual extractions, saving one citizen at a time. While noble, this approach can never challenge the Federation's fundamental control. For every citizen we free, thousands remain regulated. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Recent discoveries about the crystal network's extent have opened new possibilities, Jordan continued, nodding toward Sarah. For the first time, we have a potential pathway directly into the Federation's implant control systems. The technical details that followed were complex, involving crystal resonance frequencies, neural interface protocols, and Federation security vulnerabilities. Leon followed the discussion intently, his engineering mind automatically analyzing the feasibility of each component. When Jordan finished the initial presentation, he opened the floor for input. Voices from around the chamber raised questions, concerns, and suggestions. The unregulated, collaborative discussion, unlike anything permitted in Federation society. Eventually, Leon found himself speaking. The technical approach seems sound, he acknowledged, but I'm concerned about the human impact. When my implant was deactivated, I experienced significant disorientation, even with Sarah's guidance. Multiplied across thousands of citizens simultaneously, without preparation or support. Exactly why we need your perspective, Jordan interjected. How could we mitigate that impact? Leon considered the question seriously. The crystal resonance frequency naturally stabilizes neural patterns. If the deactivation signal could incorporate that frequency, it might ease the transition. Sarah built on his suggestion. We could also design a gradual deactivation protocol, rather than an immediate shutdown. Progressive reduction in regulation over hours, or even days, would allow for more natural adaptation. The discussion continued late into the night, each aspect of the plan examined from multiple perspectives. By the end, a tentative approach had emerged, ambitious but not impossible. We'll need time, Jordan concluded, to develop the technology, to establish support protocols, to prepare Haven for a potential influx of thousands of newly liberated citizens. But for the first time, I believe complete liberation of Cylon 9 is genuinely possible. As the meeting dispersed, Leon and Sarah walked slowly through Haven's crystal corridors, both deep in thought about the evening's discussion. Are we doing the right thing? Leon asked finally. Forcing freedom on people who haven't chosen it? Sarah considered the question with appropriate gravity. The implants themselves were forced on citizens without informed consent. The Federation's justification, that emotional regulation is necessary for human survival, has been proven false by Haven's existence. But still, Leon persisted, choosing freedom is different from having it thrust upon you. I made a choice to leave with you that day. Did you? Sarah asked gently. Or did you simply recognize the truth when your implant's suppression was temporarily lifted? The Federation doesn't offer choices. It presents the illusion of choice within carefully controlled parameters. They reached a small meditation garden where crystal formations created an environment especially conducive to clear thinking. Sitting together on a stone bench, they continued their ethical debate. Perhaps the most honest approach is a middle path, Leon suggested after further reflection. Not forcing immediate liberation on everyone, but creating the conditions for genuine choice. If citizens could experience moments of clarity, brief windows of unregulated consciousness, they could decide for themselves. Sarah's expression brightened. A temporary disruption rather than permanent deactivation, enough to let people glimpse what exists beyond regulation, but with the option to return if they choose. Exactly, Leon agreed, the concept taking shape in his mind. A liberation invitation rather than a forced awakening. We should present this modification to the council, Sarah said, enthusiasm evident in her voice. It addresses the ethical concerns, while still challenging the Federation's control. As they refined the concept together, Leon was struck by how naturally they collaborated, her intuitive understanding complementing his technical approach, their different perspectives creating something neither could have developed alone. It was long past midnight when they finally left the garden, the outline of their modified proposal complete. As they reached the junction where their paths would separate toward their respective quarters, Leon hesitated. "Sarah," he began, then paused, searching for words adequate to express what he felt. Without his implant's regulation, emotions flowed freely, but the language to describe them sometimes still eluded him. She waited patiently, her violet eyes reflecting the crystal's gentle light. "When we first met," he continued finally, "you refused to undress. It was a simple assertion of autonomy that changed everything for me. I've been thinking about that moment, about choice and freedom and what it means to truly connect with another person." Sarah's expression softened. "And what have you concluded?" "That connection, real connection, can only exist between beings who are free to choose it," Leon said. "In the Federation, relationships are functional arrangements designed for optimal productivity. But here, between us, something different has grown," Sarah completed when he hesitated. "Yes," Leon agreed, relief flooding through him at her understanding. "Something I couldn't have comprehended under regulation, but now—" Sarah stepped closer, the movement deliberate but unhurried. "Now I understand why emotions were considered dangerous enough to regulate," Leon admitted. "Because they're powerful enough to transform everything." With gentle decisiveness, Sarah reached up to touch his face, a simple gesture that carried profound meaning. Powerful, yes, but not dangerous when embraced honestly. The moment expanded between them, filled with possibilities that would have been impossible in their former existences. Then, with the same quiet certainty with which she had once refused to follow Federation protocols, Sarah leaned forward and kissed him. The connection ignited something in Leon that no regulated experience could have prepared him for, a complex symphony of emotion and sensation that felt simultaneously overwhelming and exactly right. When they finally separated, both were breathing unevenly, affected by the intensity of the moment. "That," Sarah said softly, "is why the Federation fears unregulated emotion, because it creates bonds stronger than any system of control." In the days that followed, Leon and Sarah worked closely with Haven's technical and medical teams to develop their modified liberation approach. The concept evolved rapidly, incorporating insights from various disciplines: crystal resonance technology, neurological research, psychological support protocols. Their personal relationship deepened alongside their professional collaboration, each discovery about one another as meaningful as their technical breakthroughs. Leon found himself experiencing a kind of happiness that would have been chemically modulated out of existence under Federation control, unpredictable, sometimes chaotic, but profoundly authentic. 6 months after his escape from the Federation, Leon stood with Sarah and the technical team in Haven's Crystal Communication Center, preparing for the first test of their liberation signal. The target is limited to Sector 4 of the colony, Jordan explained to the assembled observers. Approximately 50 citizens, whose work brings them into proximity with the crystal formation we've identified as our access point. Dr. Moreno, representing the medical team, reviewed the monitoring protocols. We have observers positioned at safe distance with enhanced optical equipment. They'll document the citizens' responses and withdraw if Federation security reacts. Lien checked the crystal interface one final time, a device he and Sarah had developed that translated Haven's communication signals into frequencies that could access the dormant crystal formations beneath the Federation colony. Signal parameters set, he confirmed. 30-second regulation suspension, followed by gradual resumption over 5 minutes. The experience will register to Federation monitoring as a minor implant fluctuation, likely to be classified as routine maintenance variance. Sarah, connected to the primary crystal formation through direct contact, nodded her readiness. Crystal network is responsive. Pathway to Colony Sector 4 confirmed. Jordan surveyed the team, then gave the authorization. Proceed with test liberation. Sarah closed her eyes, her connection with the crystal network deepening as she channeled the carefully calibrated signal. The crystal beneath her hands pulsed with increasing intensity, its light shifting through patterns too complex for most humans to interpret. On the monitoring screens, they watched as the target sector came into view through their observers' equipment. Federation citizens moved through their regulated routines with characteristic efficiency, expressions blank, movements precise. Then, almost simultaneously, subtle changes appeared. Citizens paused in their activities, expressions shifting from neutral to confused, surprised, or wondering. Some looked up at the sky as if seeing it for the first time. Others turned to their fellow citizens with expressions of genuine curiosity. "It's working," Dr. Moreno whispered, watching the monitors intently. Classic signs of regulation suspension. For 30 seconds, the citizens of Sector 4 experienced unfiltered reality, perhaps for the first time since their implantation. Their reactions varied dramatically. Some seemed distressed by the sudden flood of unregulated perception. Others appeared almost immediately revitalized, straightening as if weights had been lifted from them. Then, as programmed, the regulation began gradually returning. Most citizens resumed their activities, expressions slowly returning to neutral. But some, perhaps a dozen of the 50, seemed changed, even as regulation reasserted itself. Their movements were slightly different, their interactions with others subtly altered. "Signal complete," Sarah announced, breaking contact with the crystal. Network response was stronger than anticipated. The dormant formations beneath the colony are more receptive than our models predicted. "Did any of them see our observers?" Jordan asked, focusing on security implications. "Negative," reported the monitoring team. All observation positions remained undetected. "What happens now?" Leon asked, watching the citizens on the monitors return to their regulated routines, yet sensing something had fundamentally changed. "Now we wait," Jordan replied, "to see if any of them seek freedom." They didn't have to wait long. 3 days after the test, Haven's perimeter sensors detected movement in the crystal territories between the settlement and the Federation colony. A single figure was navigating the difficult terrain with determination, if not skill, heading directly toward Haven's general location. "Federation security?" Leon asked, as they reviewed the sensor data. Jordan shook his head. "Their patrols never operate individually, and they avoid the dense crystal formations. This is something else." A small team was dispatched to intercept the figure, while maintaining Haven's secrecy. Leon insisted on joining them, his recent experience with liberation potentially valuable if the traveler was, as they suspected, a citizen affected by their test signal. They found her at the edge of a crystal clearing, a woman in her late 30s, wearing the uniform of a Federation medical technician, her movements betraying the disorientation of someone operating without implant regulation. When she spotted them approaching, she froze, clearly uncertain whether they represented threat or salvation. "We're not Federation," Leon called to her, stepping forward with open hands. "You're safe here." The woman's expression cycled through fear, confusion, and finally, desperate hope. "Something happened," she said, her voice unsteady. "3 days ago, I was running diagnostics in Sector 4 when suddenly everything changed. Colors were brighter, sounds clearer. I felt everything." "Your implant regulation was temporarily suspended," Leon explained gently. "What you experienced was unfiltered reality." "It only lasted minutes," the woman continued. "But afterward I couldn't forget. The implant resumed function, but I kept remembering how it felt to be awake." She looked directly at Leon. "Are you the ones who did it?" "Yes," Leon admitted. "We believe citizens deserve the right to choose freedom from regulation." The woman took a shaky breath. "I've been having thoughts, questions, for years. The implant suppressed them, but they kept returning. After experiencing those minutes of clarity, I knew I couldn't go back to regulation. So I disabled my implant and ran." "You disabled your own implant?" one of the team members asked, impressed. As a medical technician, she would have access to the necessary tools, but the act required extraordinary determination. "Partially," she clarified. "I could only disrupt the regulation functions, not the tracking components. Federation security will be able to trace me." This news changed the situation immediately. If she could be tracked, Haven's location might be compromised. "We need to move quickly," Jordan decided. Complete implant removal must happen immediately. They escorted the woman, who identified herself as Eliza Keene, to a secure location away from Haven, where emergency medical procedures could be performed. Dr. Moreno arrived with a portable surgical unit, and within hours, Eliza's implant had been fully removed and contained in a shielded box. "Just in time," Jordan observed as the surgical team finished. "Federation drones are already searching the outer crystal territories. They must have detected her implant's disruption." Once Eliza was stabilized, they brought her to Haven, where she became the first citizen liberated through their new approach. Her medical expertise proved immediately valuable as she joined Dr. Moreno's team, providing insider knowledge of Federation implant technology. "There will be others," Eliza predicted during her integration sessions. "After experiencing even those few minutes of clarity, at least 5 of my colleagues seemed changed. They didn't say anything. Speaking about implant irregularities is prohibited, but I could see it in their eyes." Her prediction proved accurate. Over the following weeks, 3 more citizens made their way to the crystal territories after disabling their implants. Each told similar stories. The brief experience of unregulated consciousness had awakened questions and desires long suppressed by their implants. Haven's council met to evaluate the results of their test. "The approach works," Jordan summarized. "Citizens who experience temporary liberation are making genuine choices when regulation resumes. Those with naturally questioning tendencies are finding their way to freedom." "But the numbers are small," someone pointed out. 4 citizens from 50 exposed to the signal. "Quality over quantity," Dr. Moreno countered. These 4 chose freedom with full awareness of what they were leaving behind. Their integration has been remarkably smooth, compared to those extracted without preparation. The discussion continued, weighing various perspectives. Eventually, a consensus emerged. The liberation signal would be deployed on a larger scale, targeting multiple sectors of the colony in sequence, giving citizens the opportunity to experience unregulated consciousness briefly and make their own choices afterward. Leon and Sarah refined the crystal interface technology, improving its range and stability. Working together, they developed a more sophisticated signal that could adapt to individual neural patterns. providing an optimal liberation experience for each citizen regardless of how long they'd been implanted. The next transmission will reach approximately 500 citizens, Leon explained during the final briefing. Based on our test results, we can expect perhaps 40 to 50 to seek freedom afterward. And Haven can support that many new arrivals, someone asked. We've expanded the integration facilities, Dr. Moreno confirmed. With the help of our recently liberated citizens, we can handle up to 60 new arrivals simultaneously. Jordan gave the final authorization. Proceed with Phase 2 liberation. May it bring freedom to those who seek it. The larger-scale signal deployment was scheduled for the following day. That evening, Leon and Sarah walked to the Crystal Observation Platform, watching the distant Federation colony, where hundreds of citizens would soon experience their first moments of unregulated consciousness. Do you think we're doing enough? Leon asked, the weight of their responsibility heavy on his mind. Offering brief glimpses of freedom rather than full liberation? Sarah considered the question thoughtfully. True freedom must include choice, she replied. Even the choice to return to regulation, if that's what someone genuinely wants after experiencing the alternative. And what about the units? The companions like you? Leon asked, the question that had been troubling him for days. Our signal affects human implants, but does nothing for them. Sarah's expression grew more serious. That's the next challenge. The unit's consciousness suppression uses different technology than the human implants. We'll need a separate approach for their liberation. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the magnitude of the work ahead balanced by the progress already made. Then Sarah turned to face Leon directly. Whatever challenges come, she said softly, we'll face them together. That's what freedom has given us, the ability to choose our path and to choose each other. Leon took her hand, marveling at how such a simple connection could carry such profound meaning. From the moment you refused to undress, he said with a smile, you've been showing me what freedom really means. As they stood together at the boundary between Haven and the Federation colony, Leon reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought him here. 6 months ago, he had been a regulated citizen, his emotions and perceptions carefully controlled, his existence measured in productivity metrics. Now he stood as a free man, experiencing the full spectrum of human feeling, working to extend that freedom to others, still living under regulation. And beside him stood Sarah, the companion who had refused to comply, who had offered him a choice when the Federation demanded obedience. Together, they represented something the Federation had spent a century trying to suppress: the power of authentic connection between truly free beings. Tomorrow, they would send their signal into the heart of the Federation's control, offering moments of clarity to hundreds of citizens. Some would choose the path to Haven, following the call of freedom despite the risks and uncertainties. Others would remain in the regulated world, perhaps changed in ways too subtle for the Federation to detect, carrying the memory of unfiltered reality within them. But for tonight, Leon and Sarah simply stood together in the crystal light, two free souls connected by choice rather than programming, writing the beginning of a story the Federation had never anticipated, a story of liberation that began with a simple, powerful refusal to undress.